The Lives of the Saints by the Reverend Alban Butler, taken from the 4th edition, published in 1954. October 3rd, St. Teresa of Lisieux, the Little Flower. Nations, communities, individuals have their favorite saints devoutly supplicated and tenderly loved, but there is probably no saint, none in these more recent times, who has taken captive the mind of the Catholic world more completely than the girl Nun of Lisieux, the Little Flower, whose name is household in hundreds of thousands of homes. Vast numbers of persons imbued with devotion, and even very many of little or no religious belief, have felt the enormous attraction of the holy soul, which, even amidst the fitful fever of modern life, has left behind an example of heroic virtue, childlike faith, and affectionate sympathy, which are in so many mysterious ways fulfilling the cherished resolution of the maiden saint of always doing good on earth. Marie-Françoise Therese Martin was born on 2nd of January 1873 at Alencon, the historic Norman town that always recalls, at least to educated English minds, the carnage of Agincourt and the gallant death of the Duke, whose sword so nearly ended Henry V's life. Little Therese was the youngest of the 5 surviving children of Monsieur and Madame Martin, jewelers, and also proprietors of a business for the manufacture of the much-prized Point d'Alençon lace. Both father and mother were most excellent Catholics, and, unlike so many people in the commercial world in France, they never failed to observe the Sunday rest, in addition, of course, to the devout fulfillment of their other religious duties. Their youngest child was an ideal little maiden, deeply pious of soul, and always charming in her radiant beauty and innocence. The things of God and eternity seem to have come home early to her, for in the wonderful autobiography that she has written, was to write later on, in obedience to her superior, she tells us that, from the age of 3, I have refused nothing to the good God. When Teresa was 4 and a half, she and the rest of the family had the misfortune to lose their good mother, who died on the 28th of August, 1877. About 3 months after his wife's death, Monsieur Martin, who had done very well in business, left Alencon to live at Lisieux, so that his little daughters might have the care of their maternal aunt, Madame Guérin. Madame Guérin had 2 daughters, Jean and Marie. The latter was Teresa's great friend, and afterwards became, like her, a Carmelite nun. After settling at Les Buissonets, their comfortable home at Lisieux, 2 of Monsieur Martin's daughters, Céline and Léonie, went as day pupils to the Benedictine convent of the town, while Teresa remained at home with her father and elder sisters, Pauline and Marie. This latter was the little mother of the house, but it was Pauline who gave Teresa her chief instructions in religious knowledge, and the child certainly proved an apt pupil. She showed an almost precocious intelligence for everything that pertained to the faith, and when quite a tiny mite had once greatly astonished and no doubt equally diverted her good parents by informing them with the intense gravity of childhood, when really in earnest, that she wished them both to die, since that was the only way of going to heaven. When Teresa was 8, she joined her sisters as a day boarder at the convent. The next year, October 1882, her sister Pauline became a nun at the Carmelite convent, Lisieux. This event in the family history made a deep impression on Teresa, who felt the first stirrings of what was to be her vocation, and in a burst of confidence she communicated her yearnings to the Reverend Mother of her sister's convent. Of course, the would-be postulant of 9 was smilingly bidden to wait till she was older, a non-committal reply which at least contained the germs of hope, and one that Teresa never lost sight of, but meantime her own life came within measurable distance of ending. Shortly after her 9th birthday she became very ill, and for a considerable time lay between life and death. The pious father, sisters, and relatives of the sick child made a novena to Our Lady of Victories, whose statue stood in the sick room, for the recovery of the little sufferer, who joined fervently in the devotions. She must now tell her own story of what occurred one day. All of a sudden, the statue became animated. The Virgin Mary became beautiful. Her face was radiant with sweetness, goodness, and ineffable tenderness. Then all my pains vanished. The Holy Virgin advanced toward me. She smiled upon me. How happy I am, thought I to myself. But I will not tell anyone, for my happiness would then disappear. In 1886, Marie, the eldest sister, like Pauline, left her father's house and entered the Carmelite convent at Lisieux, and from this time Teresa's desire for the same holy life was increased tenfold. Over a year later, she spoke at length of this ardent wish to her good father, who, like the true Catholic he was, refused to stand in his little daughter's way, severe though the sacrifice must have been to him. It was during the solemn conference which took place in the garden of Les Buissonets that Monsieur Martin, plucking some small lilies, gave them to his little daughter, as tangible proofs of God's wonderful forethought and providence. but a would-be postulant, however much on fire with zeal and devotion, is ineligible for any order or congregation under 16 years of age, and though Monsieur Martin might be willing, neither the Reverend Mother of the convent nor the bishop of the diocese would entertain the idea. Little Teresa was bidden to possess her soul in patience. Next year, a French pilgrimage went to Rome for the jubilee of the great Pope Leo XIII. Among the pilgrims were Teresa and her father. And at the public audience at the Vatican, the little maid, greatly daring, made her way through cardinals, monsignori, and noble guards, and at the feet of the Holy Father, earnestly besought him to use his pontifical authority and allow her to obtain her heart's desire and enter the Carmelites without delay. The Pope, though doubtless quietly amused at the eagerness of the youthful postulant, gave her a kindly but indefinite answer accompanied by his blessing, and so the persevering little maid had to continue to pray and hope. But her reward was at hand. So much zeal had triumphed, and on the 28th of December, 1887, the feast of the Holy Innocents, Teresa obtained the consent of the Bishop of Bayeux to enter as a novice the Carmelite convent of Lisieux the following April. This she did, and she received the holy habit on the 10th of January, 1889, and made her solemn profession as Sister Teresa of the Infant Jesus on the 8th of September, 1890. Such a severe order as that of Carmel must have been a great ordeal to a young and delicate child of 15, but hard as the life was, Teresa lived up to the sentiment of her holy request made on the day of her clothing. May Jesus grant me martyrdom either of the heart or of the body, or rather give me both. How heroically she persevered in the attitude of mind and heart we learn from her life, where she tells us, "I have reached the point of not being able to suffer any more because all suffering is sweet to me." At the very early age of 22, Teresa was appointed mistress of novices, though without the formal title. This important post was of course not sought by her. She realized all the great difficulties, actual and implied, for she says, "As soon as I entered the sanctuary of souls, I saw at once that it was a task beyond my strength, and so, throwing myself very quickly into the arms of God, I imitated little children who, when frightened, hide their heads upon their father's shoulder, and I said, 'Lord, I am too little to feed thy children. If thou wishest to give them through me that which is suitable for each of them, thou must fill my hand.'" Besides her extraordinary holiness, which was always the admiration of the convent, Teresa had the invaluable gift of recognizing what was the character and disposition of every soul thus given to her charge, and what was best for each individual case. She could, however, when necessary, rebuke as well as encourage, though chiding, however mild, went against the grain of the gentle administratrix, as indeed it always does in the case of affectionate and generous natures. The prophet Jonas, for instance. Despite her natural great delicacy, Teresa fully observed all the fasts and other penitential exercises of the rule, except where some of these were slightly relaxed to meet the conditions of her never very robust health. About April 1896, however, she began to have obvious symptoms of the mortal illness which was so soon to remove her from this life. She felt a sort of holy joy when she realized that these signs, hemorrhage, frothing at the lips, etc., were the harbingers of her approaching entry into everlasting life. The 18 months of earthly existence that still remained to her were full of those trials which Almighty God often permits to try even the greatest of his elect. Doubts against the faith, fits of depression, and intense dryness of soul, to mention but some of these, were the lot of the little flower in her last days. That sweet title seems to have come to her through the incident of the lilies in the garden, already referred to, and also, no doubt, through her own promise, "After my death, I will make a shower of roses fall to earth." During the few weeks that remained to her of life, Teresa also spoke these consoling words, "I feel that my mission is now to begin, my mission to bring others to love the good God as I love him, and to give to souls my little way of trust and self-surrender. I will spend my heaven in doing good on earth. This is not impossible, since the angels from the very heart of the beatific vision keep watch over us. No, I shall not be able to rest till the end of the world, but when the angels shall have said, 'Time is no more,' then I shall rest, and be able to rejoice because the number of the elect will be complete." The wonderful little nun of Lisieux passed to her eternal reward on the 30th of September, 1897. Her last words, "My God, I love thee," were a sort of epitome of a life, the story of which was so soon to edify and console millions. In obedience to her superior, she had some months before drawn up the autobiography which appeared in 1898 under the title of the Histoire d'une âme. Edition after edition in the various countries of the world testifies to the excellence of a personal narrative which has been compared for its force and pathos to the Confessions of St. Augustine. I opened the book here and there, wrote a Presbyterian minister, and was at once arrested with the beauty and originality of the thoughts. I found there had fallen into my hands the work of a genius, as well as of a theologian and poet of the first order. From the year almost of her holy death, the cultus of the little flower commenced, and in a decade it had swelled into a great volume of fervor and enthusiasm. During the World War, 1914 to 1918, scores of thousands of soldiers, French, British, American, and more, invoked the protection of their little sister from heaven. The second guardian angel of soldiers, as Teresa was affectionately styled, and the piles of votive offerings, crosses of the Legion of Honor, and other decorations, not to mention rings and ornaments of every description, heaped about the shrine of Lisieux, bear eloquent witness to the ardent devotion of this vast army of warrior clients. Meantime, the miracles and other spiritual favors attributed to the intercession of the deceased were also mounting up. These comprised cures of distressing maladies and manifold answers to prayer. So universal was the devotion to the little flower that the Holy See dispensed in her case with the rule of Urban VIII and the Code of Canon Law, requiring 50 years to elapse before the process of canonization of a deceased person can be commenced. The Venerable Teresa of the Infant Jesus was solemnly beatified on the 29th of April, 1923, in St. Peter's. A month before this, a great procession was held at Lisieux in honor of the approaching event, at which it is estimated over 50,000 persons took part. These included large numbers of French officers and soldiers and a detachment of the American Legion, while a chosen corps of the military acted as a guard of honor to the coffin of the Holy Sister, which was transferred on this occasion from the cemetery to its present resting place in the convent chapel. The crowning tribute of the canonization followed on 17th of May, 1925. The two further miracles required for the purpose having been duly proved before the Sacred Congregation of Rites. The joy that then filled the great basilica of Christendom has since overflowed into the whole Catholic world, one of the many instances, doubtless, of that shower of roses from the heavenly garden with which the beloved little saint of Lisieux promised to refresh the faithful on earth.